Entrepreneurs spend most of their time looking for the next problem to solve. This is often good for the business, but it's usually bad for the entrepreneur. I'm Chris Cooper. This is Business is Good, and today I'm going to teach you about gap thinking, gain thinking, and how gratitude can help you with both. According to Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy in their book, The Gap and the Gain, gap thinking means looking at the distance between where we are and where we want to be, or comparing ourselves to what other people have achieved. When you're in the gap, you can't be happy because you're always thinking about the next revenue milestone or the next acquisition or the next hire. And unfortunately, this means you can never be happy no matter how successful you are, because you're always comparing yourself against what you want and what you don't have or somebody else's highlight reel. Sullivan's advice in the book is to focus on the gain, to look back on the progress that you've already made. And he calls this measuring backward instead of forward. Instead of looking at yourself and comparing yourself to where you want to be or comparing yourself to other people's highlight reels, you compare your current position to your former position instead of your ideal position. Now, Dan Sullivan actually says you have an ideal in your mind and you're measuring yourself against your ideal rather than against the actual progress that you've made. And this is why you're unhappy with what you've done, and it's probably why you're unhappy with everything in your life. Don't let your past be forgotten. Instead, always measure backward. So that was the end of Dan Sullivan's quote. And this quote makes complete sense. Buddhists have been preaching the pitfalls of comparison and desire for millennia. But in a world of constant comparison, where we're watching everybody else's highlight reel on Instagram and their greatest hits on Facebook every single day, how do we avoid comparison or even jealousy? Well, here's how to build the habit of living in the gain. So first I'm going to start with daily, and then we're going to talk weekly, and then we'll talk longer term. Daily, before you go to bed, you have to ask yourself, what was one thing I did to grow my business today? Now, you're not really looking for big landmark gains here. It doesn't have to be a new client or even $5,000 in revenue. You're looking for one thing. It could be a blog post, it could be a phone call, or even a sales appointment. The most important thing here when you're looking for one thing that you did today to grow your business is not what you did, it's that you kept your momentum. Dan Sullivan recommends recording 3 wins from the day in his free app, WinStreak, which is good and it is very helpful. For me, it's enough just to look back on the day and say, what did I do to grow my business today? Oh, I did a blog post. Oh, I sent an email. Good. I've got my momentum. That's what I'm trying to preserve here. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus on the daily habit. You can set yourself up for momentum by projecting what you'll do tomorrow to keep up your momentum, and that'll help you stay on track. Now, weekly, what I want you to do is this. Every Friday, think back over your week and list the highlights. We call these bright spots. What were the 3 to 5 things that you did to grow your business over the last week? Now, you want to report those bright spots to somebody else, to a mentor or to a group of peers who are on the same journey you are. Inside our mentorship practice, Two Brain Business, we call this Bright Spots Friday. And the purpose of Bright Spots Friday isn't to brag, it's to reflect, to acknowledge your own progress, and to keep our momentum high. I use Bright Spots Fridays in my gym with other members, and I use it in my mentorship practice for gym owners too. And the bonus is that seeing other people's bright spots reported actually feeds you too. It's like borrowing a set of batteries to charge up your own. Now, monthly, to live in the gain, here's what you do. You think back to where you were 2 years ago and you compare that person to now. How big was your business 2 years ago? How much revenue did you have 2 years ago? How happy were you 2 years ago? How much time were you spending with your family? How stressed were you back then? How much were you working back then? And now practice gratitude. Thank yourself for doing the work required to get yourself to where you are now. Even if you're not where you want to be eventually, it's taken a lot of work to get to where you are now. Any progress is good progress. So while you might not be where you want to be yet, don't compare yourself against your future. This creates unhappiness. Instead, compare yourself against your past. The best time to do this, honestly, is when you're looking at your metrics every month with your bookkeeper or your mentor. Look at your metrics and then just take 1 minute and reflect on your state 2 years before. So looking at your metrics is helpful because you can compare numbers against numbers, but you can also look at your journal or whatever and think back to how you felt back then. So this is the bonus. If you keep a journal, flip back 2 years, 730 days, and review the thoughts that you were having, your progress, your frustrations, and your mindset. You're probably a much better entrepreneur now than you were back then. And here's the double bonus for monthly. When you start practicing self-gratitude, you start doing things to help your future self. I call this sending a gift ahead. Whenever I have to do something hard, like firing a client, I know that I'm giving the Chris of the future, Chris in 2026, a huge gift. And that's really what taking one daily action is all about, gifting your future self. Business is a game of momentum. If you feel like you're losing, then everything becomes harder. You feel overwhelmed, you get jealous of other people, you get frustrated, and your patience begins to wear thin. You start to wonder, why am I beating my head against the wall here? And this creates a downward spiral. Soon your staff sees your frustration and starts to mirror your stress. Then your clients see your stress and they start thinking about alternatives because nobody wants to be around an angry person. But when you feel like you're winning every day, it's easy to get up in the morning and get to work. Your optimism and your energy will rub off on your staff, and your clients will feel that energy from them and from you. Your positivity will attract people instead of repelling them, and you'll build even more energy from that. There will always be wins and losses on your entrepreneurial journey. The key to long-term success is to build and keep a sense of progress. So forget the fake smiles and faking it till you make it and the empty energy. Forget trying to motivate people. Build a habit of looking for your wins, start living in the gain, and focus on momentum ahead of everything else. I'm Chris Cooper. This is Business is Good. And if you'd like to chat more about this, just go to businessisgood.com. There's an option on that website to join our free group, and you can just click through that, join the movement, and we'll get into the discussion in our free Facebook group where we can talk more about this stuff. Thank you for your service.